like when I go to my buddy's studio in Detroit, he's like, hey, I got the Silverface Princeton, and I did like 3 guitar tracks on it, and I had ordered it while the mix was printing from Sweetwater. Like I ordered the same amp. I'm like, well, I gotta have that one, So it's like, okay, now I'm making no money on this trip. That's cool. Whatever.
Sometimes you got to do that.
You do, 100%. Yeah.
And sometimes you don't need to do that. I guess discretion is advised.
Yeah. Well, and building this studio, like, you just kind of collect things over 20 some years, and you end up loving certain pieces, and those just end up sticking and staying. And then the stuff that you're like, well, this has been sitting in my rack for a year and a half, and I may have used it once or twice. And it's like, okay, that's $1,000 that I can recycle into something else that I might use more frequently. So a lot of that stuff, I'm sure everybody deals with that, even just guitar players with pedals and stuff like that. It's like, even if it's not right for you, it's going to be right for someone else, and they'll use it. So
totally. Yeah. I mean, I sold my speakers when I bought new speakers, and I when I hadn't used my drum set in like 2 years, I finally sold it. So, you got to get rid of that stuff to help pay for other things. I needed to upgrade 100%. My monitors. So things had to go, The monitors were more important,
Gear is inspiring, man. It's like, even plugins, it's like it inspires me, it really does. Like, I'll get dorky with like this Reslow mic. I bought like a Reslow mic off of eBay, and off of Reverb. I'm sorry. It was really clean, and it's like an early 60s ribbon mic made out of the UK. And I found a really clean one on Reverb, and then I'm looking at the message, and it said Mark Lynette Studio. Well, Mark Lynette like works with Brian Wilson in the Beach Boys, and I'm like, dude, this is like, is this like the Mark Lynette, kind of thing? And messaging him, and I'm like, now it's like, okay, now I have one of Mark Lynette's microphones that he used on a Brian Wilson session. It's like in my mic locker. So of course, whenever I pull that out, I'm going to tell the Brian Wilson story. And everybody's going to be like, oh, that's so cool. It's just stuff like that. It can really help a session too,
I love that. Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah, good for you, man. That's awesome. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about mixing, because you kind of touched on it before. Tell me a bit about. I know you're mixing as you go, which is something that I struggle with. I try to I spend the extra 8 hours mixing because I kind of want that objectivity and kind of want to build it up again. But I guess walk me through your approach to mixing, in the box, hybrid, whatever it is that you're thinking about, stereo bus processing.
Yeah, I'm definitely mostly in the box now. Sometimes if it's the right project, I have an Otari 2-track tape machine, and I'll print it to like 1/4 inch and back in. But I'm running everything through Burl converters, which is awesome. Once I got those, I was really comfortable mixing in the box. I got the Bomber digital to analog and the analog to digital, so I have 2 channels of in and out. So I'm just kind of clocking to the Burl and just going, staying in the box. So yeah, essentially, I'll start with drums or the vocal, usually the vocal and the drums, getting the groove down. The hardest thing that early on that I struggled with, and thankfully digital has caught up to that, was like room modeling. And like I said, I'm kind of in a shoebox here. So all my drums were like, okay, the only thing I can really do here is like the super 70s dry drum sound. It's like, this is all I can really do here. So I'm just going to stick with that for a while. Now I'm able to add space to it with like the UAD Ocean Way plugin, and T-Rex has those room, like the Fame Studios and Sunset Sound, and there's all these different room modelings now that are really, really nice sounding. So I'll start with getting the drums into space that feels good for the track, just kind of working my way up from there. Usually it's dialing things in as we make the record, and then tweaking it at the end, as well. How much distortion do we want to use on these things? All that. But realistically, I know that as much time as I want to spend on drums, the vocal is going to be the most important thing.
Right. You even say it on your website, right? Vocals are always going to be front and center.
Yeah.
It's always MO.
Well, and I kind of realized that early on, and especially working with a lot of singer-songwriters, it's like, because the lyrics are so important, it's really about just getting that vocal to be sitting perfectly right in the middle of that whole deal. then moving guitars around that or keyboards or whatever is going to be there. But I'm also, I think being a rhythm section guy, I'll try to treat the groove just as important as the vocal and really getting that underlying rhythm section track to feel like something, so it complements the vocal in a nice way. So I'll spend a lot of time on drums and bass and whatever the rhythm guitar is or rhythm instrument is, percussion, stuff like that, and really try to get the track moving around the vocal in a nice way. That's super important to me because I think it's just something that I always have to feel that has to be there, Obviously, if it's just an acoustic song with a vocal, there's none of that comes into play, but most of the stuff I work on is like full band productions. So I'll spend a lot of time on drums and bass and get the rhythm guitar. And then once I get that little bed made with the vocal, then I'll just kind of start filling everything in around it. So and I try to think of I'm always kind of thinking of mixing because even when I'm producing, if a guitar player is like playing a part, and I know that's going to compete with the part he already played or he or she already played, I'll be like, put a capo on and play it up a little bit so it's just out of the way of that thing you already played. So it's like I'm thinking of the mix while I'm producing because I know that if he plays it higher up on the neck, it's going to mix itself in there better than if he's kind of staying in the same register as he's already performed. So even while I'm producing, I'm thinking about that mix, and how everything's going to sit in there and be relative to each other.
Yeah, I mean that's good arrangement, right? That's like
right. I think so. Yeah, I think so. And same comes into if someone plays an organ part, and I know that's gonna. I'm like, oh, well, you said you were planning on doing like a big ooze thing in the chorus with the background vocals. It's like, let's do the ooze first if that's more important. And then we'll figure out the B3 part after that. So we know that the ooze are going to be, stuff like that. So the mix kind of comes together a lot easier if everything's kind of out of the way of each other. Usually, I say usually because sometimes it doesn't matter, but yeah, most of the time it helps.
And you're not running into like CPU issues when you're like mixing while you're tracking and stuff. Like, how do you deal with that?
No, not at all. I have a Universal Audio Apollo and I have a lot of outboard gear, so I really try to get everything through that printed like Pro Tools is a tape machine. That's kind of what I go for. So, but you can still edit and stuff like that. So I'm definitely trying to get everything as close as possible on the way in, so I'm not using a ton of plugins when I mix.
Yeah, amazing. So it's like the commitment, the old school approach, of like just the Beatles, just getting
that helps, and I think that helps with the speed thing too. It's like we've made that decision, let's move on, and
right.
And I think that making those commitments early really helps. It'll help determine where the track's going to end up going. That's a lot more fun that way than thinking, well, this could end up being like a Zeppelin sounding song, or it could end up sounding like a ABBA song. I want to know which way we're going with this. So. Those are two just complete opposites that I try to think of, but you know what I mean. It's like I'd rather know that
roomy or tight,
I want to go Zeppelin with this. It's like, let's go Zeppelin. If we're gonna go there, let's just go there. So, that helps a ton, and I think that fulfills that old analog mentality that I kind of started out with. It helps feed that part of my soul that I need to maintain in the digital world. I probably don't need all this stuff, but it helps me get to this space quicker, and it helps me.
That makes a lot of sense.
It helps me get sounds quicker, and
right. You can get everything in your computer, but if you get it real and tactile, it's just so much faster to kind of get those sounds and just bake them in and just be like, yep, that's it, done. I totally get it.
Yeah, it's like when you talk to these guys that still mix on consoles, it's like they don't say it's because it sounds better. They say it's because they're faster on it. You know what I mean? Like they're like, well, this is how I know how to do it. I'm faster here. And it's like, that's why I do it. And it's like, I get it, It's
hard to change gears when you've been at it also for so long. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I know, modern music is being made on Ableton and, but it's hard for me to kind of wrap my head around that because I've been, doing it my way for so long, It's just
Right, yeah.
that's a hard switch, you know.
It is a hard switch, and I'm definitely open-minded to trying whatever, anytime. I love it. Like, I even tried to learn Studio One just because it was cheaper than Pro Tools, and I was sat on there for 5 minutes. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to make a track. I'm out of here, you know?
I had the exact same reaction to Studio One, by the way. It's like, why, where are the tracks? How do I do this?
Like, I'm just sticking to Pro Tools. That's all I know. But yeah, I love a lot of modern pop music. Like, I listen to like Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas and what they're doing, and I think it's so cool. And I would love to learn how to do more of that stuff. I really think it's awesome. So I'm trying to, stick to what I know, but not be super closed off enough to where I'm not learning from the new thing. So and because there's a lot of great new music being made, and it's really nice to listen to and dissect how they made it, and learn something.
Yeah, absolutely. If we could go back into mixing a tiny bit, I'm curious if you're big on stereo bus processing, or if you're kind of like, let's leave it for the mastering engineer.
No, I do a little bit for sure. I try to keep it as limited as I can, but I'll definitely try to do like the stereo width thing, put like just a kind of a bland, transparent like Fab Filter EQ to cut stuff if things are getting a little too muddy or whatever. My kind of glue plugin is the Black Box Plugin Alliance tube loading thing. Love that thing.
What's it, the HG2 or something?
Right. Yeah, that's on everything.
So good. Me too.
Yeah. Yep. And it's like you can push it hard and get that. It'll add distortion in such a beautiful way, and then it's got the blend knob in there. You can just do that, and then so I don't really use a lot of compression. I'll put like an L2 limiter, like the Fab Filter, just to make the mixes hotter. And for as far as like, I used to use like a lot of tape machine plugins, but ever since I kind of went with that Black Box tube loading thing, it's like that's all the vibe I've needed. That's a good one. And I might use an SSL compressor just to kind of keep things in check a little bit, but I try to do that on the individual tracks if I can. You know what I mean? So if something's poking out, I'll try to go towards the source of what's poking and then take care of it there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like, you could really chase your tail when you're kind of doing like the top-down mixing when you're starting from the stereo bus and going backwards, because then often you'll boost something and then it's affecting the stereo bus compressor and you go back. And hopefully I'm going to have Craig Bauer on the show, and I know he uses like VCAs to kind of get around some of that stuff. So hopefully I'll get to chat with him and learn about that.
That'll be interesting. No, that's super cool. Yeah, I love automation. I mean, honestly, like automation is the thing. But it's also so dependent on the style of music you're working on. So if I'm recording a lot of this acoustic-y singer-songwriter stuff, I really got to be careful because that stuff needs to breathe. And you can really just close all that stuff right up and overcook it if you're too heavy-handed on the mix bus. You know what I mean? So that I really try to be careful with that stuff. And then like you said, let the mastering engineer kind of take it to the finish line.
Yeah, totally. With that, I mean, with the HG too, I feel like sometimes it's just about the blend. You know what I mean? Like I'll go 80 or I'll go like 30, depending on like, how much you want it to crunch. You know what I mean? It just depends.
Yeah. Oh, it's gorgeous. It really is. And it works on everything. I think it does. It's worked on everything that I've used it for. So I'm all in on that thing, man.
I have it loaded from the get-go on a mix. So at this point, it's just a matter of how much.
I bought the new one too, the one with the mid-side features, and I just haven't got into it enough. I still been using the old one. I got to spend some time with the mid-side one, but I'm kind of nervous to try it because I'm so just like set it and forget it on the other one. It's like, do I want to like get in there and do more surgical stuff, or do I just like let it go and not use it? So it's I have it, and I will learn it someday, but I'm definitely using the first version still on everything.
Yeah. Do you have like a template or several templates to kind of get started when you're doing the actual, like the production becomes the mix, right? It's all one session. What do you see when you start, or is it just like a blank canvas?
Yeah, I try templates. I always try templates, and I think my problem with templates is that I'm always want to kind of know what my options are. So when you have your template up and you have like these two delays up, it's like, okay, I'm just going to reach for one of those two delays, which is fine. Saves time. If you know you love those things, awesome. I just kind of like to look through my reverb plugins and see like, oh, this one might be more interesting on this. And I know